What's up, everybody? It's the Cassius Morris Show. Thanks for tuning in to episode 201 of the podcast. Joined today by a very special guest calling me from just outside of New York City. Eddie Trunk began his climb to the top of the broadcasting industry 30 years ago. He's an author, radio personality, music historian, and television host, securing his title as one of the most popular program hosts on Sirius Satellite Radio, as well as a long run on That Metal Show on VH1. Eddie Trunk is a tremendous force in the world of music and broadcasting. He has a huge amount of experience and expertise in this field, and that's why I wanted to get him on the podcast today. I actually had Eddie on the podcast 5 years ago via phone. It was crazy to look back and see the evolution of this show. Well, hear the evolution, because it was just on the phone. There was actually no video. So really happy to keep the podcast evolving, and it's going to be fun to look back on this one and see how much we've grown if Eddie potentially comes back on the next time. If you like what you're hearing, make sure to subscribe on whatever platform you're currently consuming this on, be it youtube.com/Cassius Morris, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, Stitcher Radio. Hit that subscribe button and leave a comment or review. Let me know what you think of the content I've been putting out. I would love to see you guys' feedback. And without further ado, let's get into my podcast with Eddie Trunk. Eddie Trunk, thanks for joining me on the podcast.
Cassius, thank you for having me, man.
Yeah, 100%. We connected a couple years back over the phone. Now we're in the age of Zoom, so I guess it's sort of to be expected. Real quick to start it off, you've been doing so many interviews for so long, most of those interviews being in person in your studio and a lot of video stuff in the past couple of years. So what does a day look like in the life of Eddie Trunk at the moment in terms of recording your content? Are you going to a studio? Are you working from home? Tell us what's been up.
Well, nothing has changed for me because prior to the pandemic, for people that don't know, I currently do 6 live shows a week for Sirius XM. All 5 of them all talk and interview, the other hybrid of music and talk. And then I do another show and a podcast, but those are pre-recorded, another radio show that goes out to FM radio. So that stuff has always been pre-recorded, so that was unaffected. But my live daily shows on Sirius XM, when I started working for this channel called Volume and doing this a little over 4 years ago, I live outside of New York City and New Jersey, and I didn't really want to deal with going to New York every day. So as part of my agreement with them, I had it so they built me a little home studio so I could work from home as opposed to dealing with New York. And it turned out to be a blessing when the pandemic hit because they were in a scramble to get all of the other programs that were originating from their studios equipment and getting the people to learn how to use the equipment. I was already doing it for 3 years. So nothing changed for me. And the buildings have been closed ever since. So I was easy, and there was nothing that changed. The only big difference was every month I was flying to LA and doing my show from the Rainbow with a live audience. That's been suspended. I was doing work from the LA studio. Obviously that's been suspended. And when, doing things, incorporating Zoom, I'd said to some people, prior to the pandemic, I'd never even heard of Zoom.
Me either, to be honest.
Yeah, everything was FaceTime or whatever. I didn't know there was such a thing as Zoom. So now the world is Zoom, and incorporating Zoom into the things that I'm doing and doing things over Zoom. But that's really been the only change. Otherwise, it's been pretty much seamless for me because I was working from a home studio anyway.
And that must have felt like a blessing. And I had a similar conversation with Ace when he was on the podcast, talking about how he was, adapting to home studios since, the late 80s. And when all of a sudden it comes out and that's sort of the way that it's being done at that point, then it's not that much of a chore to learn. That must feel like a blessing.
Yeah, I'm not a very tech savvy guy, and I'm still not good at all with digital editing. I can't do anything like that. I'm just terrible with all that stuff. But once I learn the necessities of what I need to do to get something done, then it's fine. And it was just great that I had already been doing that. I have a mobile unit and a stationary unit, so I have actually 2 units because I do, people that listen to my show every day on Sirius XM, I have, when times were normal and there was traveling going on, I did it from everywhere, from hotel rooms to casinos to live concerts to the Rainbow,
Yeah.
anywhere. So I got very comfortable with what I needed to make that happen. And it's different, because it's actually a live broadcast. So you have to make sure your stuff is set up in advance and that you're able to execute what you need to do in advance. So there's a lot of pressure to it sometimes because you're going into a setting where you're not sure if they have a decent internet connection or what you're up against. But I've been real fortunate with that. And when I'm home and doing my work from my home studio, I'm actually at my weekend house at the moment, but when I do it from my home studio, it's seamless because I literally just click a couple buttons and connect with my producer and away we go. So it's been great. I've been very lucky, to still be able to work through this pandemic, and also for my audience, the product they're getting out the other end of the speaker sounds unchanged. When things first happened, we didn't have engineering set up because all the buildings were closed. So for a few months, I had to do the show literally on my own, just speaking with no callers and no interaction and no interviews. That was a little crazy. I was working off of people sending me emails. But as of about 3-4 months ago, they set up remote engineering stations, so we got back to doing it live.
What was that like for you? Did that remind you somewhat of the basement pirate radio days when you were just trying to get it fired up on your own and try to get something started?
One of my favorite things about doing radio is the two-way street with the audience. Just as much as I love interviewing somebody, I also love just spending a day like I did today, where just no guest and just the audience hitting me with stuff and just debating and going back and forth with stuff. I call it sports talk for rock fans. So I really, really missed that interactivity with the audience. So what I did when it was just a one-way street of me going out is I'm fortunate I have a pretty big following on Twitter, and I was able to say to my audience there and make the people there, hey, if you want to engage in the show for the next couple months, I'm not going to have phones. I'm not going to have a live program. I was recording it the night before, and then it went out the next day.
Right.
So I just told people, email me, send me your emails, send me your city, your state, and I'll address it on the air, and we have to roll like that. So it was a little weird, but people seem to like it and hang in there with me and understand that we were in unprecedented times and everybody was trying to figure it out. So when things get back to normal, I'll look forward to resuming my monthlies from LA. But outside of that, things will probably pretty much stay the same as they are right now.
When you talk about the connection with the audience and how that's one of your favorite parts of doing this, did you anticipate having that connection with other music lovers when you were starting this? Because of course, when you're trying to interview artists, you expect some sort of connection with them. But did you ever think about that piece, or were you just sort of going ahead and not thinking about details like that?
You mean being able to have an audience that you can just interact with like that? And
yeah, I mean,
that
you're looked at like
engage with you?
Yeah, you're sort of looked to as a source for the music community. For people who don't have access to those artists, they can call up and get the answers from Eddie Trunk. Did you ever foresee something like that?
Not really, although very early on when I started my career, which was right out of high school in 1983, even as early as that, I mean, back then in the mid 80s, just a few years out of high school, I was working at a record company. I was doing freelance journalism writing. I was working at my local rock station in New Jersey. So I was writing, selling music. I started working at a record company, so I was working with bands. So even very early on, I became known, at least locally, as this guy that was just consumed with rock music and knew a lot about it, and that's what I really cared about. So I kind of had that tag on me, which I was very proud about very, very early on. Things went to a whole nother level when I started that metal show and I started on TV, and then people started seeing me, and then that segment Stumped the Trunk when people started asking me questions, and then it really became like, Sammy Hagar calls me the rock Rain Man or whatever. So then it really became a different thing. But no, I only got into all of this because I wanted to share my love of music and share the music I loved with other people. I never expected me to become so well known because of it. But it's something I'm proud about, and it's something that I put a tremendous amount of work in. And look, not everybody is always going to like the things I say. That's the artists, the fans, and what have you. But I believe strongly, more so than ever, in everybody having the right to their opinion. And I respect others, even if I don't agree with that opinion. But I think one of the things that's gone away, and that's really scary to me, is this, having differing opinions and be able to speak like a fan and speak honestly about how you feel about something. And when I started putting that metal show together with Don and Jim, I mean, it was a conversation we had very early on, because those guys were friends of mine, and they used to come in and sit in on my radio show. And I said, guys, we've got to do the same show on camera that we would do if we're hanging out at a bar. We got to speak openly and honestly. There's going to be people that aren't going to like it because we don't like something, but let's have that dialogue. Let's be real. And I think that's something that really resonated through, and something that I still do to this day. People aren't always going to like or agree with my positions on things, and that's fine. But I have the right to say it, and you have the right to disagree with it, but let's have that dialogue. And I think that's really, really important. It's something that I take a lot of pride in doing now more than ever.
Yeah, well, definitely. And you mentioned now more than ever. I'm curious, is that something that's slightly more difficult in today's day and age? Because now we have rock stars talking about, political situations and health situations. Does that add a whole other dimension to it, especially when it's so polarized now?
Well, none of that. I mean, we're obviously in an unbelievably divided political time right now. And although I have my feelings about all that, I never bring that on the air. And I was very proud, and I got thanked for it on a regular basis, especially in the last couple of years, that my show provided a safe haven from that world. And I want to be that. I'm not, even though I have my views and my feelings like anybody else, I'm that's not what people come to me for. And honestly, I was really turned off to a lot of it from a lot of artists. I just, only because I don't know. I understand there are people that have very strong opinions and want to share them on social media or whatever. But I was of the mindset of, I'm getting pounded with that from so many different angles everywhere. I want to escape from it. So for me, I was very proud, and I said this on the air. This is a politics-free zone. You're going to come here and you're going to get into debating Judas Priest versus Iron Maiden and just silly stuff to get away from that for a couple hours. And that's really what I really always wanted to do, and did do successfully. And I had a lot of people thanking me for it. Look, there are artists that you go to for that stuff and have made a career doing that, and that's their platform, and I respect that. But I don't take sides in it. I mean, when they come on my show, they know the turf is 100% music. Two people that I know very, very well, Tom Morello is a very good friend of mine. Ted Nugent, I talk to and we text, and I'm friendly with. You got those two guys who, by the way, are friends.
Oh yeah,
are on this on opposite, complete opposite ends of the spectrum.
Different
but
worlds.
When they're on my show, it's all about music. And that's all my conversations are about them. So that's not an issue for me, because people know that I'm a music guy, and that's where the thing is. What is an issue is extreme hypersensitivity in the world we're in, where everyone is so PC and so politically correct that when you just say you don't like a song, that somehow gets translated online to, he's talking shit about someone, and gets
Eddie Trunk
escalated and rolled
bashes.
over. What's that?
Eddie Trunk bashes so-and-so.
Right. Or it becomes a headline, or somebody pulls something out on YouTube and makes it a headline, takes it out of context, doesn't, that context is a huge issue. And I can't tell you how many times I've run into that in my career. People looking for clickbait, people trying to stir the pot. If people don't agree with what you said, they want to maybe make themselves look better in that artist's eyes by bringing it to them and saying, look what he did. And I don't get caught up in that. I don't read comments. I'm confident in that. I treat things in a respectful way, but I'm very, very passionate about the fact that you should be entitled to your opinion. I'm entitled to mine. We should be okay to air that publicly, disagree respectfully, and have that debate and dialogue. And, every record isn't the greatest record that's ever been made. Every band isn't the greatest band that ever existed. We should be able, as fans, to have that dialogue. And I pride myself on still doing that. Every once in a while, it's going to cost me relationships or an interview or something. But you know what? Coming up on nearly 40 years, I'd much rather be true to my audience and true to my position on something and worry about that than worry about, one person doesn't want to talk to me this album cycle because I didn't like the record. I mean,
right.
That makes me nuts when you see these artists talk about like, hey, everybody should have their opinion but then behind the scenes, they take it out on you when you have an opinion they don't like.
Right. Everybody should have an opinion that's critical unless it's about my work, and then we're good.
Right. It's just like all the artists that in the political realm that tell you to vote, vote, vote. But as long as it's on the side I'm voting for, if it's not the side I want you to vote for, then don't vote.
Exactly. I put that up on Facebook, I think. I said, don't tell people to vote if you won't accept other results than what you wanted. That is the process, I thought. But it is fascinating, Eddie, and that's really why I brought it up, because you do let people say their piece. You do let callers call in who don't agree with you, and you go back and forth with them. So it made me curious as to how you handled it in this world. But I mean, from listening, you handled it well, and you do always bring it back to music. You also mentioned,
I try to keep it respectful. I always again, we're in my biggest problem, it just makes me nuts, is we're in I call it like pounce society. Like people are just looking for something to pounce about and to be outraged, fake outrage for 24 hours about. And I just won't cave to that stuff. And but there's so much of it out there. And even if I don't like something, it doesn't mean I won't have the artist on the air. It doesn't mean it doesn't mean I'm wishing them ill will. We are all fans, and you don't have to fake it. It's like, it's fine to say, no, I didn't like that record. Today we had a discussion on the air. Somebody called up because I said, I was really happy AC/DC made a new record, and I'm really happy to have them back. And I think the record's okay. I said, I think it's a better record than you could have expected from them, but obviously it's not in line with their classic material. And a couple of people called in today and disagreed, and that's great. We had a great, respectful conversation. The problem comes when you got some guy who's just trying to curry favor with their favorite artist or get attention that re-edits that or reinterprets that as somebody talking shit and then goes and puts it out there like that. And then you have a bunch of people who never even heard what you originally said in the context, and then they pounce on, and you get this
ripple
nonsense.
Effect.
And but it all lasts for 24 hours before they're on to another outrage. Like I just saw something yesterday that blew my mind.
What was it?
I'm a football fan, and Chris Collinsworth on the Steelers-Ravens game on Wednesday night made a comment about some women that came up to him and were so he was amazed at how into football they were. Into the Steelers they were. And that didn't faze me at all, like even when he said it. And then somehow someone interpreted that as it being like negative to women or not respectful. And and this guy is out there apologizing and caving. And then the article in whatever I read it on, TMZ or something, said an NBC was considering whether there would be disciplinary action. I'm like, what?
Yeah, that's a little
world
ridiculous.
Are we in? What is happening to this world?
Oh my gosh.
That's what makes it difficult, Cassius. When you hear nonsense like that, you're like, oh my God, could anything, just an innocent little comment, be the thing that takes you down? It's like, what?
Yeah,
Nuts.
that is so crazy. And I mean, where's the room for growth? I mean, if you say a comment like that, it might come out of your mouth and then you might say, "Oh, that sounds kind of silly," because obviously tons of women like football. Maybe I shouldn't have said it like that. But okay, let's give them that opportunity. And I don't even if it was said that way, why are we going to get outraged about something like that and lose sleep?
I have a lot of friends that are comics, they're comedians for a
Hmm.
living. And I don't envy their position right now
Hmm.
because usually comedy was the safe haven from political correctness because it's comedy.
Yeah.
But a lot of these guys are really questioning how to do this anymore because even that is not necessarily the safe haven anymore. So it's just a strange time. It really is.
It certainly is. That being said, does it sometimes bother you when you see the videos like we have discussed or touched on here in this interview? Eddie Trunk bashes such and such, and they're running advertisements on this video and they're taking you out of context. Does that bother you in that sense, or does it more so bother you when it affects a relationship with an artist? And to further that, was there one incident that you really wish wouldn't have happened in that regard? Like, I wish I still could have a connection with that guy.
Well, it bothers me when it's out of context.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, when somebody takes something, and that's so easy to do. When you do a setup to something and say, "Hey, I really respect or I like this, but I didn't." I mean, anybody, any kid can re-edit content to make it sound and look a
Hmm.
certain way. But if it's a position that I had and it's presented in context, and people just feel that that's bashing or whatever, and that's how they want to label it. I mean, I don't agree with that as the label, but have at it. I mean, if that's what you want to do. I mean, look, at the end of the day, I'm lucky people care enough about what I say to go to those ends. I'll tell you something. People may find this amazing, but this is the God's honest truth. I have never in my life posted anything on YouTube. I
Okay.
have I have a YouTube channel which has some things that a guy who used to do social media for me uploaded. I don't know if when the last thing that's been put on there. I don't do it. I'm not proud of this, but if you asked me to put something on YouTube right now, I probably wouldn't know how to do it. So anything that's on there and anything that happens like that, it just people, and some people, by the way, do it very respectfully and do it because they're fans and they want to share the content or they love the interview, and that's great. Some people have ulterior motives or want to make me look bad or think that they can re-edit something to cause outrage or whatever, man. I can't worry about policing that. I take confidence in knowing that I've done this for nearly 40 years. I currently have 8 national broadcasts a week. I'm very lucky that I've got the audience I have. Most people know where I'm coming from, and yes, there has been instances where there's been issues, and I can only hope that those artists take the time, if there is a question, to come to me and talk to me about it and not
Hmm.
believe what they're hearing or reading online and say, "Hey, did you say this and why do you feel that way?" And have a respectful conversation. And if I said it, I'll own it. If I
Yeah.
didn't say it, I'll say, that's out of context. And that's all I can ask. But you will go nuts playing whack-a-mole if you try to go out there and police every single thing
Get
and
each
every
little
comment.
video. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't do. I mean, I don't read comments anymore. I just and look, I'm fortunate that 98% of this stuff is very positive, and I'm
Hmm.
grateful and appreciative. But you can't get too sucked in with trolls or people who have agendas, and it's unfortunate when that happens. But it's a part. Look, it's nice to know they're paying attention. You know.
100%. I mean, like you said, it's sort of flattering that they are going through such lengths because of something you said, and your opinions have proven to be incredibly entertaining and provocative. So I tip my hat off to you as far as that goes. In terms of streaming services versus artists, there seems to be a lot of talk across a lot of different genres about the fact that the house always wins. Spotify, Apple Music take home the lion's share of this money that artists are making. Just curious what your thoughts are on that situation and if you think potentially this will ever improve in the favor of the artists.
Well, yeah. I mean, I have so many friends that are artists, and many of them are impacted by this. I hope that it gets more fair in terms of the payment models for the artists. However, I don't think it's a really tough thing to think that it's going to change, because I think the only thing that would really facilitate change is if the artists pull their music off of the services. If there was like a strike, if there was like, if suddenly these streaming services didn't have content to put out, people aren't going to subscribe to it. So
Yeah.
I don't really see it changing radically unless there is enough of a leveraging position to do it. And one of the problems with that is a lot of artists, I'm sure a lot of fans know, don't own their own music.
Right.
So they're not the ones making the deal with the company. So that's why the record companies are now starting to make a lot of money again, but it's not trickling to the artist. So new bands and new artists that have a lot of traction, maybe some of the big pop artists of today, people who own their catalogs and do have that control, they would have to be in a position to really create some sort of movement to say, hey, this is going to stop unless we cut a more fair deal.
Right. So it's sort of like
not an end of the business I'm involved in, because I don't write or record songs, but I do see it as being a problem. But right now, Cassius, if you think about it, the whole mentality of the music business has changed, where making money off of selling music in any way or having it heard is gone. Like, there's still some there, but it's not what artists survive on.
Right.
Some of the artists that I see and the labels are guilty of this as well, because what they're doing is they're giving their music away in advance of it even coming out. How many albums do you see coming out where there's 3-4 lyric videos or something on YouTube, free to all?
Yeah.
Because the idea is the whole idea of trying to sell music has been virtually abandoned.
Right.
The idea is to just get people to hear it, because there's such a glut of it. Just hear it. And then if you like it, buy the ticket to the show. That's why the whole model is shifted to the live show. It used to be that the live show was done to sell the record because that's where they made the money. That's a complete 180 now. Now the music is an ad to come to the show, which is why ticket prices are through the roof and why you have a ton of shows on the road in normal times.
And then also, I mean, it almost seems like they're more dependent on collecting whatever ad money they'll make on YouTube than even trying to make that money in record sales. Because I'm sure that, I mean, if record sales are really suffering that bad, they must be making something comparable through YouTube potentially. I don't know if you know anything about that.
Well, there's some money to be made there, but it all comes down to the volume of how many people are listening to something. But the record companies are trying to do this thing now called 360 deals, where they actually get a piece of the artist touring and merch. And that's why some artists don't want to sign record deals and don't even want to take a record deal now, because they don't want to give up a piece of everything.
Right.
So there's, the business is always evolving and changing itself. But to me, I think where music has gone through streaming and through these services that people get music is, it's just now about, please just listen to it. Know it's out, acknowledge it. Hopefully you like it. Hopefully you come to a show. I remember 3-4 years ago, I had John Bon Jovi on my show, and I went to a release party. It was not for his most recent record, the previous one. And the album was a couple weeks from coming out, but they did a performance on Broadway in New York where they played the entire album live.
Wow.
And then like a week or two before the record came out, when we did this interview, they had already released like 5 songs from it on YouTube.
Ooh.
And I said to John, I said, aren't you worried that people have no desire to buy the record, considering they can hear it free on YouTube, and that maybe even when you play this concert, someone might record it and post it?
Right.
It's like, whatever, man. He goes, just hear it. I'm just trying to make sure people hear it, and then we'll go out and tour. Now, if you're Bon Jovi, who's got all the money in the world and all the resources in the world, it's easy to do that
Yeah.
because you don't care if you're not making money from sales because you're getting paid millions from your back catalog.
Yeah.
But if you're a young up and coming artist, that's a tough spot because you can't pull a lot of people on the road and you're not getting money from the music.
You really do have to be at a certain level almost to even make it sustainable, it seems.
Yeah, but people are resourceful and people figure it out and people do it. And you have these other ways that people are able to monetize what they're doing. And I mean, so there's always a reinvention. I mean, there's been a huge reinvention in media. There's been a huge reinvention in the music industry.
Yeah.
The way touring works. Look at the rise of these VIPs that are happening. I mean, everybody has these VIP packages and these upcharge things.
Mm-hmm.
Artists that I talk to that are doing these live streams, they're making the same amount of money in the VIP post show and the merch they're selling than they are in people buying the regular tickets. So people figure it out.
Do you think that some of those VIP packages are too expensive?
You talking about? You mean the online stuff, or when things are normal
for the
shows?
actual streaming?
I haven't seen enough of them to know what they're charging for them. I mean, and
Kiss is charging $2,000 almost.
Who is?
Kiss is charging. There's a package that I believe is about $1,000.
Well, that's Kiss. I mean, Kiss always sets the bar when it comes to charging money. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
But here's what I'd say on that, Cassius. So you can, whether it's the price of a concert ticket or a T-shirt or a stream or a VIP, I say this all the time. I had a concert promoter on my show named Danny Zalisco the other day who's been promoting concerts for 40 years.
Wow.
He came on my show. He said, look, these prices are set at the end of the day by the artist. Don't let anybody fool you, okay? And as he said the same thing I've been saying forever. If you want it to change, don't buy it.
Yeah.
If you buy it, you are signing off on you being okay with the price. So if there's some exorbitant, ridiculous VIP package, it's not tailored for everybody. It's tailored for people who have disposable income and are willing to buy it. But, I got a ton of outrage calls when Guns N' Roses first announced their reunion 5 years ago, because of the price of tickets.
Mm-hmm.
And I said to my audience, you know what? If you want it to change, I know you want to go to the show, but don't buy the ticket. Because if those shows go on sale and half of the tickets remain unsold, guess what? They're going to adjust prices. Well, those shows went on sale and they were gargantuan successes initially, and most of them were all sold out. So you can't say somebody overpriced something if people are willing to buy it. And here's the other part of it. StubHub and all these secondary markets, which are really scalpers, if they're taking the $500 ticket and they're finding people who pay $1,000 for it, it's just capitalism. I guess it wasn't overpriced.
Somebody's paying for it. They got their wallet out. So if it's overpriced, then show me some more evidence of that. I mean, and that's the thing. It's such a catch-22 because I was talking about this once and I was saying, people are going through so much. They're going through financial losses and then artists are charging that price. But again, there's no gun to anybody's head. It is an offer. And so is a $500,000 car. That doesn't mean I have to buy it.
And we don't know it's going to be interesting to see what happens coming off the pandemic because in an already oversaturated touring market, you're going to have more tours than ever. And you also are up against a lot of people financially challenged that are going to come off of this thing. So there are a lot of booking agents and people that think in the industry that artists are going to have to adjust ticketing a little bit and drop some prices. That being said, if AC/DC announces a tour, no matter what they charge for the ticket, people are going to find a way to go.
People will be doing garage sales.
Yeah. Because if you really want to go and you're that hardcore to go and you can't say no and it's the thing you got to see, people always find a way to scrape together the money because they got to get there. And the people who are in those positions, those artists who are big enough to be in that position, they know it. That's why they can command that money.
No truer words have been said. Eddie, thank you so much. Always a wealth of information and an honor to share the microphones with you.
Cassius, best of luck to you with the show. Continued success. And thank you for having me on. And I wish you all the best and happy holidays.
And there you have it. my exclusive podcast with Eddie Trunk of The Eddie Trunk Show, Sirius Radio, Hair Nation. I want to thank Eddie for coming on the podcast. If you guys like what you've been seeing, please hit that subscribe button wherever you're consuming this. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher Radio, Podbean. And of course, we can't forget about our YouTube viewers, youtube.com/Cassius Morris. Click the subscribe button, leave a comment or a review on the audio platforms, and let me know what you think about the content I've been putting out and what you want to see next. And of course, make sure to follow me on social media to get all the updates about what's going on next with me and the show, and also to get the opportunity to ask questions to some of your favorite artists, actors, television hosts, whatever it may be. At Cassius Morris and at Cassius Show on all social media. That's Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok. And I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of the podcast. I know I certainly did. Thanks so much for tuning in. Until next time, this is Cassius Morris saying, rock on.